What is going on, you stallions? AK-40 Kevin here in the gamer heaven. We need to talk about Cyberpunk 2077, how it is absolutely unplayable and just an absolute busted wreck on PS4, PS4 Pro, Xbox One, Xbox One S, Xbox One X, Xbox Series X, PS5, just console in general. Just absolute trash. Which is crazy because without the delays, this game was set to launch for PS4, Xbox One, and PC. This game was announced and in development well before the announcement of the PS5 and Xbox Series, so the fact that it is broken to the point to where Sony no longer sells the game on the PS network because it's deemed unplayable by Sony, not to mention the Xbox version looks like a hot bag of dicks as well, and the only way to get a decent, and I say decent experience, is on the PC. It's pretty good on the PC. I streamed about 10 hours on Facebook Gaming and Twitch TV, and we had a good time. It looked pretty damn good. I had everything cranked up to ultra with the knob all the way to the right, and it looked pretty goddamn good and very minimal glitches. There was only like one major bug that I encountered. So let's talk about this. I'm going to show you guys some gameplay footage on a PS4, 4 Pro, Xbox. We're going to look at some underwhelming frame rates. We're going to look at some terrible textures, some faces of NPCs that are just blurred out. Can't make out heads or tails, ass to face, face ass. You can't tell what you're looking at, boys. Let's get it. Alrighty, boys, so this is a little bit of footage here from Digital Foundry. I'm not taking responsibility or credit for this footage here. I think they did a phenomenal job putting this project together. Just putting it out there. Don't slap me with a DMCA or a copyright strike. I'm giving them full credit for this. Anyway, the game runs at 1600 by 900. That's 900p. However, the game frequently dips down to 720p. So we're taking a huge generational leap back here down to 720p, capped at 30 frames per second. However, as you're going to see, it gets down to the low 20s and even in some scenes in the 15 to 17 range where it looks literally like a disco, straight dancing under a strobe light. Not to mention, the frame rate's garbage, but the resolution's trash too, and all the textures, like the NPCs literally have no detail to them. If you compare the PC version where people actually look good, like you can see pores in people's faces, you know, their eyeballs are bloodshot and stuff, it looks insane. And then you look at it on console where it looks worse than Grand Theft Auto 5, which came out in September of 2013 on the 360, the PS3, as well as the new gen consoles, which are now the old gen consoles. Those games look better than Cyberpunk by a long shot, and they're playable. You don't get major frame rate dips, you don't get bugs, glitches that cause you to restart not only the checkpoint or even the game, but sometimes your console. Consoles are getting bricked, so blue screens of death where you have to restart your whole console, sometimes even do a hard reset where you're going to lose all your save data and shit. So that's a major issue, boys. That's not like a small thing. That's a big one. That's a thick, girthy one, boys. All right, so looking at frame rates here, I mean, we're down here in the 25 range, and they're just walking around. Oh, low 20s. Now, just to put this out here, 30 frames per second looks bad, looks choppy. Now, if that's all you're used to in console, your eyes have been accustomed to only seeing 30 frames refreshed per second. But as soon as you play on a new-gen console, which can hit 120 hertz, or a PC, which can hit like 300 hertz if you have the right rig and monitor for it, and then you go back to looking at something in 30 frames per second, it looks like shit. Literal like feces in your eyes. That's how people get pink eye, actually, is 30 frames per second. But like when you get down to like 20, 15, that's when a game literally becomes unplayable. You know, if you're in a dialogue sequence or something, it's not terrible. You can fight your way through it. But if you're in a first-person shooter or a driving scene or something, your inputs aren't going to register what's on screen. You're just going to be all over the place, and the game becomes unplayable. Like, look at this combat scene here. 15 frames per second. You can't even aim because these character models are skipping across the screen. Now, the PS4 Pro version does look quite a bit better. It's at 2112 by 1188. Really weird resolution there. So it's not 4K, which the Pro can push, and it's not 1440. It's quite a bit lower than that. The frame rate does stay a little bit more consistent at 30 frames per second, but you still have all the PlayStation or Sony specific bugs and glitches like the blue screen of death and all that stuff. Not to mention, on all the console versions, the worlds don't look as immersive because there's about a quarter of the amount of people walking around the world. So NPCs or non-player characters are cut down to about a quarter. Vehicles that you see driving around the city doesn't look flush and alive and real and breathing like it does on PC, which was the whole vision of the game, was to make it look, you know, lived in. This wide open city at Night City look lived in, with a bunch of NPCs having conversations, vehicles driving off on the freeway in the distance and stuff, and you're not going to get that on console. PC, you actually have a slider where you can adjust how much crowd density you want. Of course, I had that on high as well, you know, to see as many people on screen as possible and stuff like that. And I never lost, you know, my 60 to 70 frames per second, which is dope. I'm not flexing. I don't even have the ballerest PC in the world. It's a mid high-end build. Probably closer to mid than high now with the 30 series cards being out and everything. But anyway, and a lot of people might try and use the whole, oh, Kevin, it's a huge open world game. That's why it's having such problems. Okay, let's look at Saints Row and Grand Theft Auto, which have been out forever and actually look and play better. Higher frame rates, better resolution, better draw distance, more density in crowds and vehicles than Cyberpunk, which has come out now. And granted, it was delayed several times, but myself and a ton of other content creators, reviewers, streamers believe this game should have been delayed even further to massage out some of these kinks and bugs. Like, now they have 2 major patches, one coming January, one coming February, to try and make this game playable on PlayStation. Like, as of now, it's actually taken off the PlayStation Network, so you cannot buy a digital copy anymore. And Microsoft, don't think you're any better over there. Look at this. We're getting 17 frames per second on the Xbox One. Now, granted, this is a base Xbox One, not an S or an X, but even the X, which is an absolute powerhouse. I owned one for 2 years, and it was, you know, by far the most powerful console of the last generation. It was a banger. Like, compared to the PS4 Pro, it shredded performance-wise, but it still's running like anus. Fresh, sticky anus. All right, so moving on to the Xbox Series X, because I know a lot of people are curious about the new gen consoles. Kevin, how do they perform? You might have just bought yourself a Series S or X or a PS5 if you're lucky enough to get your hands on one. So they do perform quite a bit better here. As you see, it's very close to that consistent 60 frames per second, which is a huge leap. From 30 to 60 is a very noticeable leap. Also, you see it looks quite a bit prettier. However, the textures are still quite rough in comparison to the PC version. The NPCs and vehicles driving around are significantly less than you're going to get on PC, and there are still those console-specific bugs. Now, there are 2 different modes you can play on the Series X. You have quality and performance. Obviously, quality is going to give you slightly better graphics, higher resolution, better lighting, at the suffrage of a little bit less frames per second, and performance is going to give you a little bit crappier graphics, but still good looking, but a higher frame rate. Now, me personally, I would take frame rate or smoothness over pure graphical fidelity 10 out of 10, 7 days a week. I was pretty curious about the performance of the Series S because guess who owns one? Your boy here. So, yes, it is at 30 frames per second, not 60, because this game is extremely demanding, and the Series S has about a third of the graphical power, if you're looking at pure teraflops, than the Series X. However, that frame rate is sticking up there at 30 frames, even during this wide open scene where you have a ton of stuff going on, a lot of moving parts, you're shooting, you're driving, all that good stuff. So yes, it does perform better than the previous generation with the One X. How about that PS5 performance, Kevin? Well, as you see, it's supposed to be capped at 60 frames per second. However, it does dip slightly under that in some of the scenes like this, where you're in the wide open environment driving through the city. Also, you're going to notice a lot of pop in. You're going to see vehicles pop in. Look in the distance. You're going to see some buildings pop in here. Granted, they could have played that off as, oh, it's just fog, or, you know, you couldn't see that because you're coming out of a tunnel, whatever. But facts are, look at these buildings when you come up to them. The windows weren't rendered. And everything just looks not polished. And this is on the PlayStation 5. So that's a pretty powerful console. It's got a really fast RDNA architecture. It's got a really nice APU in there, SSD, which should make the game load times really quick and all that stuff. Obviously, the experience on a PS5 and Series, Xbox Series, is going to be a lot better than the Xbox One and PS4, even the Pro and the One X. But it's still not on the level of being enjoyable. I mean, yeah, you can get through the game, but damn, you're missing out on so much. You're missing out on what the game was envisioned to be. I think PC kind of lives up to that right now, depending on what kind of PC you have. Obviously, if you have like the family porn computer down in the basement or whatever, the old gummed up keyboard, you're probably not going to be getting more than, 30 frames per second on ultra super deluxe low. But if you have built a decent gaming PC, you probably spent between $800 and $1,300, you're going to be able to run this on ultra settings and it's going to look good for you. So, I mean, the consoles, they're not where they need to be, and it's really depressing because there's a lot of console gamers out there. There's currently own the PS4 and Xbox One as their primary console, and there are millions of people that pre-ordered this game and they're left unplayable. Now, granted, CD Projekt Red did publicly offer a refund for people that are unsatisfied, and then Sony turned right back around hours after that tweet from CD Projekt Red and said they will not validate refunds. And now they blatantly took it off. They just straight up took it off PlayStation Network to where you can't even buy the game anymore because it's so janky. Microsoft is still honoring the refunds if you bought digital or a box version. If you bought a physical box version, you can try and bring it back to the retailer you bought it from, Amazon, Walmart, Target, whatever. But yeah, some serious patches need to come along, patches and updates to fix these bugs and glitches, because it is just, the game as it is, it does not belong on 7-year-old hardware. So PlayStation, PS4, even the Pro, and Xbox One, even the X, it just doesn't belong there. It runs like absolute dog shit, which is fucking crazy. And this is on the Series X. Like, look at this. Just a huge chunk of your driving just froze up on you. And this is very common. This happens nonstop. But yeah, the game, I mean, it just doesn't really belong on 7-year-old hardware. And even the new consoles, they're better, but the versions you have right now, the Xbox Series version is a slightly buffed version of the One X with a higher frame rate, and the PlayStation 5 version is literally just the PS4 Pro version, but with an uncapped frame rate. So you're going to get the same bugs and glitches and errors as the previous consoles because there is not a unique, proprietary, dedicated, exclusive version for the PS5 and Xbox Series yet. Those will be coming at a later date, but they're not out yet. You're just playing a optimized or upgraded, boosted version of the previous consoles. All right, guys, please drop in the comment section below your opinion of this game. Do you think it can be saved? Do you think it's going to bounce back after these patches in January, February? Or do you think that it just should not be on the One and the PS4? That's kind of what I believe. I just think it's too not well optimized for it to even be playable. I know that's unfortunate because, like I said, millions of people own PS4 and Xbox One, but you're going to have to play this game on PC or a new gen console. There's plenty of other games you can play. This just isn't one of them. All right, guys, have a great day. Peace.